Hello and welcome to my bullet journal flip through video for 2021. As the title suggests, this video is just going to be me flipping through my journal for 2021, and while I do so, I'll be chatting about the year and reflecting on how it went, things I did, and how I felt. This video is going to be very chatty, so if that is up your alley, grab a tea, get comfy, and let's get started. For those of you who haven't seen my monthly journaling videos where I build these spreads, this year I decided I would pick a color palette to represent each month and keep to a monochromatic palette based on that month's color theme. I also tried to include Japanese singer Suzuki Airi at least once per month, which was quite fun. So if you're wondering who the super pretty girl is you keep seeing throughout, that's who that is. I'm super happy I was able to include her every month as planned. I mentioned this in a previous video or two, but building a completely monochromatic color palette is hard. It's difficult to find pictures that are just one specific color. There's usually something else in there, like black or white or skin tones or whatever. And so there were very few spreads that actually turned out how I envisioned them to when I decided to do this monochromatic concept. They still turned out absolutely lovely, and there's clearly a color theme going on, but some months were easier to do than others. I managed to do monthly spreads for each month and weekly spreads for all 52 weeks of the year in 2021, which is something I don't think I've done any other year, so I'm pretty proud of that. I didn't necessarily use every spread I did, as like with previous years, I was in and out of using my Bujo regularly, but I think I filled out the majority of my Bujo this year. So with all of that covered and explained, let's get into that reflective, chatty aspect of this video. 2021 was a really tough year for me. I mean, every year before 2021 was a tough year for me, but 2021 really kicked my ass. It started out with physical health problems in January and a depressive slump in February, so we weren't exactly starting off strong. March was my best month. Like I'm telling you, I was at the top of my game in March. My habit tracker was almost completely filled out. I was dancing 3 days a week and painting almost every day. I was productive every week. The color palette choice ended up really matching well with how I felt. Positive, patient, and growing. I don't know what the hell happened in March, but I was the best version of me, and I wish she'd come back because it just went downhill from there, and I've been dealing with one thing after another since. Depressive slump and burnout in April. I started to recover in May. I did manage to complete one of the biggest personal projects of my life at the beginning of June that took 4 years to complete, but then my laptop decided it could no longer read my external hard drive that had about 10 years worth of important content on it, as well as footage for about 4 to 5 projects I would have spent the summer working on, and now I no longer could. That triggered one of the worst depressive spells of my life that lasted the entirety of the summer. I turned 25 in July, and existential crisis aside, my birthday party turned into a shit show, and I regretted having asked for a family get-together in the first place. I thought the fall would be better. That depressive spell started to lift come September. I cut my bangs at the end of that month and started catching up and knocking out some video projects that my messed up hard drive and subsequent 3-month-long depressive slump had held back. I was starting to get back into the groove of things and feel like myself again, until my best friend of 19 years, my cat Shorty, passed away at the beginning of November and completely ruined my life. So yeah, fall was not any better after all. Then Christmas rolled in, and I was extremely busy and stressed with holiday commissions, and ended the year with the dreaded realization that I likely will not ever be able to move to Japan or go to school there, which is a dream I've literally dedicated my life to for over a decade. All of that said, 2021 was truly one of the worst years of my life, with a few cool and happy things sprinkled throughout, but overall being rather rare. I'd like to think it can't get worse than this, but I made that exact same comment about 2020, and it absolutely did get worse, so I'm not going to underestimate how much worse it can get from here, because it honestly can always get worse. Last year I talked a lot about bullet journaling not really fitting into my life anymore and considering not continuing with it, but ultimately decided to give it one more good try in 2021. I found that I experienced a lot of the same issues this year as I had last year. It was a little easier to use, and some of the practicality issues were lessened when I started taping the pictures and decorations to the page rather than gluing them, but I still found that carrying my Bujo around so I could write down and check off things throughout the day to be kind of tedious and annoying when I had to move or cancel plans. I found myself again using my notes app to create to-do lists that I could easily change and move around, planning out weeks of to-do lists in advance and such like that, and then copying them into my Bujo at the end of the week. This obviously defeats the purpose of a Bujo. As much as I love decorating it and it's fun to use sometimes, I find I keep going back to a more convenient way of handling my to-do list, which means it's probably not fitting into my life well enough since I'm not sticking to it. I also find my Artist of Life workbook has replaced my Bujo for a lot of the purposes I used it for, so it feels even less necessary these days. As much as I love the analog feel to things, I love journals and diaries and physical pictures and letter writing and postcards, and I love physical things. So bullet journaling being a very analog way of keeping to-do lists and making plans totally fit into that, but these days it's just not enough anymore. As much as I like the feel of it and I love decorating it, it just doesn't really fit into what I need in life right now. That said, my Bujo Journal With Me series will be ending with the 2021 series of videos as I'm going into 2022 Bujo free. I may do a Bujo spread here or there for fun, but I plan on using the time and journal space I normally use for Bujo spreads to create other types of journaling videos, including art journal and J-pop journal spreads. These videos don't really get a lot of views anyway, which isn't really why I do it. It's not why I do any of my YouTube content, because nothing I do gets a lot of views. I do this channel for fun. Right now, that's what it's for, and I just really enjoy making content. I enjoy creating things. So I both enjoy creating journal spreads and also enjoy creating videos, so it's kind of like a two birds with one stone sort of thing. But at this point, I don't really enjoy having a Bujo anymore, and the only aspect I do enjoy about it is the decorating process, and I can do that in other types of journals. And this series has not done nearly as well as I would have liked it to make sense to continue to do something that I'm personally not even necessarily fully enjoying anymore anyway. If my videos aren't going to get more than like 6 to 7 views per video, I want to at least enjoy the process of creating them. So I hope that people will enjoy the art journals and the J-pop journals. I think maybe those ones might get more views, or at least I'm hoping that they do better, simply just because they'll be easier to find, as my bullet journal videos probably get pretty buried under the massive amount of bullet journal related content here on YouTube and on Instagram and in other social media. Bullet journaling is just such a huge, oversaturated part of the community, and so I'm hoping that maybe my future journaling videos will be easier for people to find and enjoy and take inspiration from, and I'll also enjoy making them as well. So again, two birds with one stone. I'd like to share a ranking of my top favorite months and my top favorite spreads to finish off this video, which is something I didn't do for my 2020 flip through video. My top 3 months are April, July, and November, with a special shout out to September. January was just a really strong start. Every spread was cute and some of my best of the entire year. I really liked the butterfly detail in week 1, and I loved this little angel Irie in week 4. April's spreads were really creative and cute, and pink is my favorite color, so that already gives it points by default. Just looking at these spreads gives me a shot of serotonin. They ended up being some of the most monochromatic ones out of the entire year. It helped that I owned a lot of pink colored stationery goods. There's a few spreads throughout the year that were particularly good and really stand out, and week 1 of May is one of those. I love the space doodle theme going on here, and I wish I'd have done more of this in other spreads because it's always such a cute aesthetic. May was one of the more inconsistent months. I had a hard time finding enough supplies and pictures that were just one shade of purple to fill 4 whole weeks, so it ended up being more of a mix. I definitely prefer pastel colors and would have preferred to have all of these spreads be light purple if I could have done it that way. June had a few cute spreads that stand out to me, but July really shines among the summer months. Yellow is one of my favorite colors, so it also gets default points too, but I'm a sucker for how playful and fun the spreads are, and they give me a sense of warmth when looking at them. Most of the spreads over the summer months ended up empty or filled with lists of incomplete tasks due to that aforementioned depressive slump. It's a shame, since these ended up being some of the more creative months, with the cutest designs that ended up going to waste. They're still nice to look at and are like little pieces of art in their own way, so I guess it's not entirely wasted in that regard. I hope you can still find inspiration in them at the very least. September gets that little shout out because I loved the minimalistic vibes and the color palette was really soothing. The monthly page is one of my most favorite spreads of the entire year. November spreads are ironically the prettiest spreads of the year in my opinion, despite November being the ugliest month for me personally. December's color theme is also ironically very calming and fresh feeling, despite the month it represents being anything but that. I was so consumed by stress that I had constant chest pains throughout the entire month. This month's color was out of my comfort zone, and I also tried some new styles of spreads, so it was a great way to end off 2021. If I had to pick a month that was my absolute least favorite from an aesthetic standpoint, it would be August, followed by May and October. Thanks so much for watching, especially if you've watched all the Bujo Journal with me's for 2021, and if you haven't, I have a playlist on my channel where you can find all of them collectively in one place, and you can just binge watch them if you want to. This series was the only one I did this year that I was consistent with and completed successfully, so I'm particularly proud of it. If J-pop journals and art journals sound like your thing, feel free to subscribe, and I'll have more of those coming at you a couple times a month starting in the spring.